Snow drifted like quiet ash through the evening sky, soft as breath, endless as regret. The lanterns of Willow's Rest flickered in their glass shells, casting fragile halos over the frozen street. In the window of Martha Keene's general store, a young girl stood so still she might have been carved from frost. Her mittened hands pressed against the glass, her eyes wide with a wonder too old for her years. "Daddy," she whispered, the word misting the cold pain. "Can I buy that dog?" Her father did not answer. Marshal Elias Wren stood behind her, his coat dusted white, his gloved hand resting absently on his holster as if seeking balance, his eyes fixed on the same sight. An old gray dog chained to a post outside the store, its fur matted with snow, its breath rising in weary plumes. The creature lifted its head, and something ancient passed between man and beast, a recognition neither wished for. Elias's face stiffened. His heart stuttered. The dog's one good eye gleamed beneath the lamplight like a memory refusing to die. Inside the store, warmth hummed through shelves of grain and fabric. Yet Elias felt only the bite of winter. Martha Keene, sharp-eyed and steady as ever, followed his gaze. "That one's trouble," she murmured. "Belonged to the old deputy before. Well, before that night." The words hung like icicles, heavy, waiting to fall. Elias said nothing. He felt Clara's small fingers curl around his own, seeking comfort. He should have pulled her away, but he didn't. The world outside was too still, too honest. The past had found him again, wearing a dog's shape. He managed a single word, "Come," but she lingered, unwilling. Her gaze never left the animal. Its chain rattled faintly, not from defiance, but from the trembling of cold and hunger. Elias let her out, boots crunching against the snow. When he passed the dog, he couldn't help but look again. The creature's ear twitched. It whined once, a small, broken sound that burrowed into him. That night, Elias dreamed of gunfire. He dreamed of blood-darkening snow, of a man screaming, of the dog's growl tearing through the silence. He dreamed of his own voice shouting commands, too late, too wrong, and the world collapsing into red and white. When he awoke, his hands were shaking. He poured water into a tin cup, but it trembled over the edge. The fire in the hearth had died to embers. Across the room, Clara slept curled beneath her quilt, her doll clasped to her chest. Her breathing was steady, a rhythm that soothed him in ways prayer never had. He sat there until dawn. When the sun rose pale over the hills, the town came alive with rumor. Men muttered in the saloon. Women whispered near the chapel gate. "The marshal's girl fancies the killer dog," someone said. "That beast bit through a man's throat. Should have been put down years ago." Elias heard every word. Shame had a way of echoing, even through snow. He found himself at the edge of the corral where the dog had been tied. Its eyes followed him with an unnerving patience, neither begging nor accusing, only waiting. The shopkeeper, Martha, appeared from the doorway, her shawl drawn tight. "You don't want that one, Marshal," she said softly. "He's been passed from hand to hand since the incident. Nobody keeps him long. He remembers too much." Elias almost smiled, though it never reached his eyes. "So do I, that night," Clara asked again. She did not plead. She only spoke, her voice soft as snowfall. "He's lonely, Daddy, I saw it. He looks the way you do when you think no one's watching." He turned from her, staring into the fire. The flames licked at the wood like restless spirits, crackling their stories of loss. He wanted to tell her the truth, that some things are better left unloved, that brokenness can bite even the hands that heal it. But her eyes, clear and quiet, held him. He said only, "Go to bed, Clara." She nodded, but before she turned, she whispered, "He won't hurt anyone again. I just know it." Elias didn't sleep. The storm outside raged long into the night, wind howling down the chimney like the ghost of a memory. Somewhere in that hour between night and morning, he made his choice. By sunrise, he was at the store again. The town still slept beneath its white blanket, roofs sagging with snow, fences like ribs pressed against the earth. The dog was there, curled into itself, chain frosted stiff. Elias approached slowly, every crunch of his boots loud in the hush. "Easy now," he murmured, his breath clouded between them. The dog raised its head, one eye glinting gold in the weak light. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Elias unlatched the chain. The sound was soft, almost sacred. The dog didn't run. It simply stood, uncertain, watching him. Elias nodded once. "Come then." They walked home together through the snow, two ghosts bound by silence. By noon, half the town had seen him. The whispers began again. Martha's voice led them, sharp but not cruel. "The marshal's lost his mind, bringing that thing into his house." Clara met them at the gate, her joy breaking through the gray morning like sunlight through fog. She dropped to her knees, arms open. The dog hesitated, then stepped closer. He lowered his head, allowing her small hands to trace the scars along his neck. "What's his name?" she asked, her voice trembling with wonder. Elias stared at the dog a long while before answering. Ash. The name fit, the color of his coat, the way life had burned him down to silence. Clara beamed, repeating it as though it were a prayer. Ash. From that day, Ash slept by the hearth. He followed Clara to the edge of the yard and back, his gait limping but proud. The townsfolk avoided Elias's house. Some crossed the street rather than walk by. The air carried judgment like smoke. Harland, the sheriff, came by near dusk. His coat was heavy with snow, his expression heavier still. "You shouldn't have brought him back," he said without greeting. Elias didn't look up from the kettle. "He's mine." Harland's eyes darkened. "You remember what happened? Every night. Then you know what folks'll think. They won't see a man forgiving himself. They'll see a lawman gone soft." Elias's voice was low. "Let them." Harland shook his head and left. His boots echoed down the porch steps, fading into the storm. That evening, Clara fed Ash bits of bread by the fire. Elias watched quietly, his chest tightening at the sight. The dog's movements were slow, cautious, as though afraid to disturb the peace. When Clara laughed, a small, silver sound, Elias felt something shift within him, a crack in the ice that had long sealed his heart. Days passed. Snow deepened. The silence of winter pressed closer around the cabin. Elias began to notice the small things, how Clara's cheeks glowed when she spoke to Ash, how the dog's tail twitched whenever she approached. In those simple gestures, warmth bloomed where words failed. But one night, the fence gate swung open. Elias found it the next morning, tracks leading away through the snow. Clara's voice trembled. "He's gone, Daddy." Elias saddled his horse and followed the prints along the frozen riverbank. He found Ash near the bend, standing over a patch of disturbed snow. When he drew closer, he saw what the dog had uncovered, a dull glint beneath the ice. Elias knelt, brushed away frost, and froze. It was a badge, his old one. The same he had lost the night of the ambush. The night Ash had lunged to save him and taken a life instead. He lifted it with shaking hands. The cold bit into his skin, but he barely felt it. Ash stood beside him, silent, eyes fixed on him as though seeking permission to remember. Elias reached out, laying his hand on the dog's head. For an instant, both man and animal were still, bound not by command but by understanding. "I'm sorry," Elias whispered. Ash lowered his head, pressing against Elias's knee. The wind sighed through the valley, carrying away the sound. When they returned home, Clara was waiting at the gate, her hair wild, cheeks flushed with relief. She ran to Ash, wrapping her arms around his neck. Elias watched them, something quiet and raw filling his chest. The snow began again, soft and steady. Behind them, the river whispered beneath its frozen skin. Elias looked up at the sky, gray and endless, and for the first time in years, he didn't see judgment there, only peace. He turned toward the cabin, the door glowing with firelight, the warmth spilling out like forgiveness. Ash padded behind him, Clara's laughter trailing in the air. And though the storm still lingered beyond the trees, inside, something had already begun to thaw. The town would talk. They always did. But Elias no longer listened. He had chosen to keep what was broken. And in that choice, he felt the faint pulse of life returning. Outside, night folded over Willow's Rest like a quilt of silence. The snow fell without sound, covering the footprints that led home. The chain that once bound the dog lay half buried near the river, glinting faintly in the moonlight, a forgotten shackle, surrendered to peace. Elias closed the door behind him, the wind sighing once before it stilled. Inside, firelight danced over wood and warmth and three shadows that belonged together at last. The story of redemption had only just begun. The thaw came slowly that winter, creeping in through the cracks of March. Each morning, mist lifted from the river like breath from a sleeping beast, and the snow sank into the earth with a quiet surrender. The people of Willow's Rest emerged from their shuttered homes, blinking against pale sunlight, and found themselves changed by the cold months they'd endured. For Marshal Elias Wren, the change was not in what he saw, but in what he could finally feel again. Ash moved through the yard with a steady limp, the gray of his coat silvering under the sunlight. Clara followed him everywhere, her laughter ringing through the thin air, her coughs less frequent now. Sometimes Elias caught her whispering to the dog as if confiding in him, telling him stories of stars and dreams and things a father couldn't give voice to. The sight filled Elias with both ache and wonder. The animal who once mirrored his guilt now mirrored his hope. But hope, in a town like Willow's Rest, was as fragile as spring ice. Word spread of trouble along the freight routes. Bands of drifters moving through the hills. Men with nothing to lose and guns too easily drawn. Elias, still marshal in name though rarely in heart, heard the rumors from Martha Keene when he came to the store for flour. Her hands trembled as she folded the paper bag, her eyes searching his. "They say they'll strike the next wagon through," she whispered. "Harlan's men can't cover both ends of the trail. You'd best keep Clara close." Elias nodded but said nothing. He could feel the weight of his badge again, though he hadn't worn it since the night Ash dug it from the river. That old circle of metal now rested on the mantel, gleaming faintly beside the oil lamp. Clara sometimes polished it with a scrap of cloth, saying softly that it looked lonely. That night, Elias sat by the window, oil lamp dim, rifle across his knees. Outside, wind combed through the pines, carrying whispers that felt like memory. Ash lay beside the hearth, ears twitching at distant sounds. Clara had gone to bed after leaving a bowl of stew for the dog. Her faith in the creature remained pure and absolute, untouched by the town's fear. When the gunshot came, it was faint, a crack swallowed by the wind. But Elias heard it like thunder. Ash was already standing, hackles raised, growl rumbling low and steady. Another shot followed, closer now, echoing off the hills. Elias rose, pulled on his coat, and reached for the badge without thinking. It felt cold in his hand, like something both alive and waiting. "Stay inside," he told Clara, though she was already stirring, eyes wide. She nodded, her lips trembling. Ash pressed against Elias's leg, ready. The night outside was thick with stormlight and distant noise. As Elias moved toward the edge of town, shapes emerged between the drifts, men shouting, the glint of metal in their hands. The freight wagon had stalled by the bridge, one horse down, another screaming in panic. The robbers were shadows in motion, their voices slurred with adrenaline. Elias crouched behind a fence post, heart steady now, the old rhythm returning. Then from the darkness a scream tore through the chaos, not from a man, but a child. A small figure stumbled from the wagon, clutching a shawl too big for its shoulders. Before Elias could react, Ash broke from his side, a blur of gray across the snow. The bandits turned, firing wildly. But the dog was faster, lunging, dragging one man down into the drift. Elias moved after him, rifle rising, the world narrowing to breath and heartbeat and gunfire. When it was over, the night was still again. 2 robbers fled into the hills. One lay unconscious, the other moaning softly, his leg torn by teeth but alive. Elias found the boy huddled near the wheel of the wagon, shaking but unhurt. Ash stood beside him, chest heaving, eyes fixed on Elias. Not fierce now, but waiting, almost pleading for understanding. Elias knelt, resting a hand on the dog's neck. "Not this time," he said quietly. "You did right." The boy's sobs echoed in the emptiness, the kind of sound that dissolves fear into gratitude. The snow around them was trampled and red in places. But this time the red spoke of protection, not regret. By dawn, word had reached the town. Men came with lanterns and rope, voices raised in disbelief. The boy's mother, weeping, clutched Elias's hands. The story spread faster than the light. The marshal's cursed dog had saved a life. The same mouths that once whispered blame now spoke his name with awe. When Harlan arrived, his expression carried the weight of all the years between them. He looked at the scene, the bound outlaw, the rescued child, Ash sitting calmly in the snow, and sighed. "Guess we misjudged that beast," he said at last. Elias studied him. "We both did." The sheriff's nod was brief, but it was enough. Forgiveness, Elias knew, rarely came in words. It came in the silence that followed them. Clara ran to meet them when they returned. Her boots splashed through slush, her laughter bright and wet with tears. She threw her arms around Ash's neck, whispering thank you again and again, as if her voice alone could bless him. The dog nuzzled her coat, tail sweeping softly through the mud. Elias stood apart for a moment, watching. Around them, the town stirred with new warmth. Neighbors stepping forward, curious, uncertain, but no longer hostile. Even Martha Keene smiled from her porch, her eyes glinting like the first meltwater in spring. Later that evening, Elias took the badge from his pocket and placed it on the table. Its surface caught the firelight, gleaming like a mirror to the man he used to be. Clara leaned against him, half asleep. "Are you going to wear it again?" she murmured. He thought for a long time before answering. "Maybe not," he said. "Maybe it's time someone else carried it." She smiled faintly. "But you'll still protect us?" He brushed a hand through her hair. Always. That night the wind softened. The sky cleared enough to show a spill of stars over the ridgeline. Ash lay by the door, content, one paw twitching in dreams. The cabin glowed with firelight, and in that fragile warmth Elias felt something shift again. A quiet, enduring peace that no rumor could touch. But peace is not absence of pain. It is the courage to live with it. When the morning came, Elias found Ash at the threshold, staring out at the road. Snowmelt glistened like veins of silver along the path leading beyond town. The dog turned his head slightly, as if to say he was ready. Ready for what? Elias didn't know. Perhaps just ready to move forward. Clara came up beside them, still in her nightdress, hair tangled from sleep. "He wants to go for a walk," she said, smiling. Elias nodded. "Then let's go with him." They stepped outside together. The air smelled of pine and thawing earth. Somewhere in the distance, a river murmured beneath the ice. The three of them walked until the town was only a memory behind them, until the hills opened wide like a promise. Elias thought of how the people would talk, how they'd turn this night into a story told by lamplight, of a dog once feared, a man once broken, a girl who saw what others couldn't, and perhaps, in some distant winter yet to come, someone would tell it again, softened by years, as if it were a legend born from snow. They reached the river where Ash had once unearthed the badge. The ice was gone now, the water slow and clear. Elias knelt, dipped his hand into the current, and let the badge slip from his grasp. It sank without a sound. "Goodbye," he said. Not to the badge, but to the man he had been. Ash pressed against him, a steady weight. Clara watched silently, her eyes bright with something she didn't yet understand. When Elias stood, she took his hand. "Daddy?" she asked. "Yes? Does this mean he's free now?" Elias looked at the dog, then at the endless stretch of sky above them. "We all are," he said. They walked home in silence. Behind them, the river whispered their secret, carrying it downstream to where no one would ever find it. That evening, as dusk settled like smoke over the valley, the people of Willow's Rest gathered outside the chapel to light lanterns for the first thaw of the season. Elias and Clara joined them, Ash at their side. The lanterns floated upward, hundreds of soft lights drifting into the dark, each one a prayer for something lost or forgiven. Elias watched his rise until it vanished among the stars. In its place, he felt not sorrow but gratitude, a strange, full warmth that came from knowing that every wound, given enough time and tenderness, could turn into light. Back at the cabin, Clara fell asleep against his arm, her small breath steady. Ash lay near the hearth, eyes half closed, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of peace. Elias looked at them both, the child, the dog, and smiled. The silence that filled the room was no longer hollow. It was sacred, he whispered, almost to himself. Sometimes the fiercest hearts are just the ones that learn to guard love too early. Outside, snow began to fall again, not heavy, not cruel, just enough to remind the town of what it had survived. And in that gentle hush, the old soul of Willow's Rest sighed, remembering how even the coldest winters end when forgiveness finally finds its way home. If this tale touched your heart, subscribe for more whispered stories of love, loss, and the quiet ways we heal.